Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Marana and Oro Valley Experience here out of the Live the Dream Media Studios. I'm your host today, David Samarano. As you know, Clint Peak and I share this side of the table, and we have really cool conversations with people that are involved in leadership, community events, and more here in the area. And we like to stay on top of things and know what's going on and keep a pulse for the stuff that's going on around us. And this time of year, we're entering the election season and campaigning season for many different levels, from local government on up. And we feel that it's important for us to have conversations with those local leaders who are stepping up to the plate and getting ready to serve and take care of the community alongside their constituents. And today, I have the honor of having Mark Napier here with us. And Mark Napier has done a lot in his time as a public servant, and he does a lot in education. I'm not going to fill you all in on that. I'm going to let Mark take the reins on that piece there. And, Mark, just get into it for us. Just tell us all the great stuff you've done at the beginning here.
Well, the great stuff I've done. I've been a busy guy. There's no doubt about that. I started as a police officer in 1981 in the state of Iowa, and served there for 6 years as a patrol officer, SWAT guy, training officer. And in 87, we decided we'd come out to a little warmer climate. If I had to do one more midnight shift as a cop in the snow and the blow in Iowa in the winter, I was going to lose my mind. So came to Tucson in 87. I took a position with Tucson Police Department. And over 2 decades or so, I rose up through the ranks. I held the rank of officer, sergeant, lieutenant, and captain. With Tucson Police. I decorated 5 times in the line of duty and had a very good career with Tucson Police. I'm really blessed to have had such a good career there. Got to do a lot of things I never thought I would do. I was an officer in the field. I was in planning and research. I was the internal auditor for the police department on 2 separate occasions. I was a field commander, an investigative commander, a division commander, capital projects manager, which I never thought I would do as a police person, but I built the police station at Miracle Mile and Flowing Wells. That was my project as a captain. And finished up my career with Tucson Police as a captain, assigned to the Southside Patrol Division. I absolutely love the south side of our community. I spent a lot of time down there as an officer, then as a sergeant, then as a lieutenant, and finally as a captain. And then an opportunity came to be an assistant chief up in Glendale, up in the Phoenix Valley. I went up there and served as an assistant chief of police. And a great job, great place, but it was away from home. And that was just turned out to be kind of an awkward fit, trying to live down here part of the time and up in Glendale part of the time. And then a job came open at the University of Arizona as an administrator at the U of A, and went to the university. Had a great career at the university. I was blessed with a lot of really amazing opportunities there as an administrator. I was twice elected to be the chair of the Appointed Professionals Advisory Council at the university. And in that role, I represented 4,000 appointed professionals on the campus. And I was part of President Hart's cabinet. And to be part of the presidential cabinet at a university is really a pretty extreme level of leadership. And you really get to see a lot about the inner workings of a university. And then people came to me and said, "Hey, Mark, you know what you should do?" And I said, "No, I don't know what I should do. You should be the sheriff." I said, "I don't know if I want to be the sheriff." And ran and was elected sheriff of our county in 2016. I was the first elected Republican sheriff in this county in 40 years. Served until 2020 when I narrowly lost re-election. Of all my career blessings, I think being sheriff of this county was absolutely a blessed career thing. In that capacity, I ran a department of 1,500 people with a budget of $165 million. Every year that I had a full budget, we finished with a budget surplus. I am kind of a Rain Man about public administration, certainly public finance, and that you have a fiduciary responsibility over tax dollars. And too many elected people and people in public administration see those tax dollars as monopoly money. I never saw it that way. I have a fiduciary responsibility to take good stewardship over those funds, and I did as your sheriff, finishing it with a budget surplus every year that I had a full budget. And then we leveraged those budget surpluses to prove to the county administration, the Board of Supervisors, and the county administrator that we could manage our shop. And so when I came and I said I need this or I need more compensation for my people, I was credible because I'd proven I could manage my budget. Narrowly lost the election in 2020 by less than 1 percentage point. And then my friend Sheriff Daniels down in Cochise County called me and said, "Hey, would you like to come down and be my chief and kind of run my department? So I went down to Cochise County and ran the department for Sheriff Daniels for a year. And then Mr. Huckleberry called me and said, why don't you come back to the county as a public administrator, assistant county administrator, rather, and had a large swath of responsibility with county, hundreds of employees and about $400 million in budget. And did that for a couple of years, and I thought I might retire. And Mr. Huckleberry got hurt, and I thought maybe it's time to retire. And I've been teaching graduate school all this time. I've been teaching graduate school for 21 years. I have a undergraduate degree in social psychology, a master's degree from Boston University in criminal justice, and I've been teaching for Boston University for the last 21 years. Also a graduate of the FBI's National Executive Institute, which is by far the most prestigious education that they give public administrators, agency heads in law enforcement. Also graduated from the Senior Management Institute for Police in Boston. That's taught by Kennedy School of Government, Harvard professors. So very much in the public administration realm there. And when you really become at a point in law enforcement, you're no longer a cop. I was a cop in a car taking calls for service for 10 years before I did anything else. But once you become a commander, you're really a public administrator. You're managing budgets, you're managing personnel, strategic planning, and all those things. And I did that for more than 3 decades of my career in law enforcement as a public administrator. So that, commensurate with that, all your education kind of gravitates toward being a public administrator. And that's where I spent the majority of my career as a public administrator, embedded in a law enforcement organization. So not only do you have all those operational decisions, which are life and death decisions, quite literally life and death decisions as a commander, but you also have all those public administration responsibilities with budget, personnel, and those things. So I've had a career I could not have imagined as a young police officer in Iowa. I got to go to the White House and be with President Trump multiple times during my tenure as a sheriff of this county. I've had experiences and stuff that I never imagined I would have, and been a public servant since '81, and I want to continue that public service as the mayor of Oro Valley.
Why not just ride off into the sunset? I mean, you've done all this. You've done a lot, Mark, and thank you for all your time in public service and serving as the sheriff for Pima County when you did. But what has led you to make this decision? I mean, it's not an easy decision, especially for family. Working with candidates and stuff on campaigns and different things that we've been brought into to do advertising and different things. There's a really firm understanding that it affects the family a lot to do something like that. So what has pushed you to want to do this?
What's in my heart is public service. I mean, that's what I've dedicated my life to. My darling wife was a nurse for 43 years. So between the two of us, we have, approaching 100 years of public service. So it's who I am. Mm-hmm. And I think to a large degree as a father and a grandfather, you set an example. Riding off in the sunset and sitting around watching ESPN all day might be interesting and playing bad golf and making it look easy. But am I really setting the example I want for my grandkids and my children? And I don't think that's the case. If there's an opportunity to serve, which clearly there is in Oro Valley, I mean, we have some very significant challenges, and somebody needs to step up that has the experience, education, training, and so forth to be able to address those challenges. And if I sit on the sidelines and I say, well, it's somebody else's problem, I'm riding off into the sunset, what example am I setting to my children, to my grandchildren, to my wife? My wife respects me largely because I am a hard worker, and she knows who she married. She wouldn't have married me if I was a guy that wanted to sit and drink beer and watch ESPN all day. That's not who she married. And I wouldn't respect myself. If there came an opportunity and people said to me, there are issues in Oro Valley, and I vetted those things, and yes, there are. And I might have the skills and abilities to address those problems, but chose to sit on the sideline and watch my community degrade, I'd have no respect for myself. And I think largely you become old because you stop doing things, not because you're doing things.
Yeah. Well, that's admirable. You keep going. That's like Clint. Clint's nonstop, man. He does circles.
It may not be the most self-preservation thing I've ever done in my life. I mean, I some days I think, you really ought to. I work out regularly and I take care of myself. I have my hobbies and I try to take good care of myself. But my ability to do that would be greater if I didn't have all these extracurricular activities. But again, I wouldn't have any respect for myself if I sat on the sidelines. And I'm not suggesting that there's evil afoot in Oro Valley, but you and I know that all that's necessary for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. And I try to be a good man, and I hope at my funeral, and I hope that's a long ways away, that people simply would get up and say, I knew Mark and he was a good man. And then I will have led a successful life.
What are the top two issues you see Oro Valley facing at this time?
I think by far is our fiscal sustainability. You don't have to be a mathematician or a rocket science guy to see that the expenditures and revenues for Oro Valley are not trending in parallel lines like they have to. Again, I am a public administrator. Public sector finance is something I've been keenly involved in for decades. And these lines are converging, which means our expenditures are at an arc that's greater than our revenues. Our revenues are relatively flat.
Why is that?
Well, a lot of reasons in Oro Valley. We're pretty much built out, and our sources of revenue are based on sales tax, bed tax, construction tax. All of these things are kind of peaked out, right? I mean, we have less opportunity for those things than we did in our development stage. I moved to Oro Valley 3 decades ago when there really was no there. Mm-hmm. We don't have a property tax, which would be a sustainable, predictable stream of revenue. We should not have a property tax in Oro Valley. So those sources of revenue are not expanding anymore. They're relatively flat simply because of the nature of the community, right? But we all know that hamburger costs more, fixing roads costs more, police costs more, health insurance costs more. All those things that the town must do to sustain services are all costing more, just like everything else. We know that when we go to the grocery store as private citizens. We put gas in police cars. Well, that costs more than it did before. So these expenditures are going up at a rate that the revenues are not inclining at that same rate. Well, over time, we cannot allow those two lines to converge, meaning that our revenues now are less than or equal to our expenditures, because that's a day that we can't do the things that we want to do. We can't afford good parks. We can't afford good roads. We can't afford law enforcement, all those things, because now our expenditures have exceeded our revenues. We can't let those two lines cross, and the trajectory of those lines are predictable. It is. It's basic math that those lines will converge at a point in the future. I've heard some people say in 2029. 2029 sounds like a long time from now, but it's really not. It's right around the corner as far as fiscal management and municipalities go. It's very, very close. And we can't allow those lines to converge. The space between those lines is the difference between your revenues and your expenditures. Well, that's where you do your discretionary expenditures, right? So if your family budget and you're taking in more money than you are expending, that's when you go out to dinner, right? Or you might buy a new car or those things. Well, unfortunately, what the town is doing is they see these lines converging and they're continuing to spend money. And that's unsustainable. And that, to me, is the primary problem with Oro Valley. That problem is requisite to all the other problems. And we need to continue to be the safest community in Oro Valley. We need to expand the envelope from which revenues are drawn and the type of envelopes, the types of revenue that we have. And further, there are just too many vacant storefronts in Oro Valley. Those are not making us any money. And we need to be very aggressive about bringing business into Oro Valley and looking at annexation and those things. There isn't a silver bullet to solve these problems. If there was, we'd already fired it. What we need is a strategic approach with a lot of copper bullets fired with deliberation and purpose to make sure that those lines stay parallel, because they have to. Otherwise, our community is not sustainable, not as we know it today.
So what do you think the biggest advantage would be to annexing? Would that be the best preliminary solution for you guys on the expanding the revenue, or are you wanting to do something else beforehand? Because I feel like that's like I've heard other conversations about that. Like that's the one we want to jump into. But there's a process to it. So what are some things you plan on doing before the annexation part? Are we gonna cut programs? Are you wanting to do more tourism oriented business? What are the steps you're gonna take to make sure that the revenue starts increasing when you take over at the lowest level?
I wish there were one thing. We have an hour-long program, and I could probably talk about this for at
Give
least
me one.
an
Give me the
hour.
top one you're thinking.
The top one is annexation. You have to market the town.
Mm-hmm.
People, you don't do intimate domain in annexation, right? Where you just tell people, I'm sorry, you're not there anymore. We're taking you over. It doesn't work like that. So you have to court people. So if we want to annex La Encantada, which there's some discussion about that, we're going to have to convince the people between us and them to be part of Oro Valley. That's a marketing thing. That takes time. So these things take time. When you look at courting businesses into these vacant storefronts, that's a marketing thing. It takes time. When you look at, which I did not agree with, the piecemeal approach to increasing taxes, it should be part of a strategic package where you look at, okay, what are we going to do today that's going to start to generate additional revenues? What are we going to do 2 years from now that was going to generate additional revenues? What about 5 years from now? David, leaders don't look at today. Today is largely irrelevant because the sun came up in the east and it's going to fall in the west. That's today. What you do as a leader is you look at where you want to be 10 years from now. You define that very, very clearly in very concrete, very objective, measurable terms. That's where I want the town to be in 10 years. What decision do I need to make today to get us there in 10 years? And it's not going to be one thing. Annexation by itself is not the solution. Increasing taxes by itself is not the solution. Courting new businesses by itself is not the solution. What we need to do is sit down and say, how do we package all these things together in a strategic approach that gets us out to that place we envision for 10 years from today? I don't see that strategic vision in Oro Valley at all right now, and that worries me. We're doing things for today that are going to have adverse consequence 10 years from now. I want to drive on good roads. My wife walks my dogs 4 miles every day, and I don't worry about her safety when she doesn't, mainly because they're big German Shepherds and they'd eat somebody. But nonetheless, I feel safe in my town. We have good parks. 5 of my 7 grandchildren attend school in Oro Valley. I want that community to stay exactly the way it is, why we moved there 3 decades ago. But I don't see that happening if we don't look at our challenges with a very strategic focus and a long-term focus of saying, okay, annexation is a solution. It's part of the solution package. Increased revenues are part of a solution package. Maybe the 880, which we talk about all the time, annexing that. Unlike some other folks, I've actually done annexation analysis. When I was a sergeant with the Planning and Research Unit of the Tucson Police Department, they would come to me and say, okay, the department is thinking about annexing, or the city's thinking about annexing this 2 square miles. We need an analysis of what that means. Well, you have to go in and say, okay, based on the service demand of this area, we need, I'll make up something, 1.5 cops, half a police car, this amount of training, this amount of police budget, blah, 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 in order to police this area and serve this area. However, this area is only going to bring in X tax revenue through state shared revenues or other revenue sources. So does it make sense? And so every annexation that you engage in has to make fiscal sense. You're either going to get greater state shared revenue or greater sales tax, or it has to make sense. So you got to look at all of these critically. But a lot of times what we don't think about is the way that we market the town, of going out and marketing Oro Valley to prospective people. So they come to us and say, no, hey, you don't have to annex us. We want you. We want to be annexed by Oro Valley. We want to live in Oro Valley because, fill in the blank. And you provide that blank to them, that compelling interest to become part of Oro Valley. And I think a strong mayor with a strong public background, as I do, I'm a fairly known person in our county. Having somebody out that people know and trust already, championing that cause and marketing our community, I think will help those efforts.
Okay, what's the next issue? I mean, we're talking about the revenue, and what's the next issue you see with Oro Valley? Is there, other than that, is there an issue with safety that might turn up? Is there an issue with the parks? Is there an issue with infrastructure? Do you see anything else going on that you're like, hey, we also need to address this? It's like it's the one that's not getting the attention that it should be, that should be known.
Well, I think public safety will always be a major factor. I've been endorsed by ASCOP's largest police organization in the state, and also my benevolent friends at the Tucson Police Officers Association have endorsed me as a candidate for mayor because I know I support public safety, but moreover, I understand public safety. So I can better communicate what public safety needs in the public arena and understand their fiscal needs. So you show me a good community that's unsafe. Can you? I can't. I cannot find one community in the whole nation that people say is unsafe that we would say is a good community. So public safety's got to be chief among us. That's why a lot of people settle in Oro Valley, because we feel comfortable with our kids in Oro Valley, and we have safe roads to drive on because the police are enforcing traffic laws and those things. So I think public safety needs to be sustained at the level that we're sustaining it. But understand, David, all these things, whether it's parks, infrastructure, all these things are requisite to our ability to generate enough revenue to support those things, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like I know we need a new car. Well, we have to have the income to buy that. We understand that in our personal budgets, right? So we know we need a car, so we start saving money. We start shopping around. We do those things in our personal budgets that we have to do. So I think requisite to all those things, infrastructure, good roads, good parks, and everything, we have to be looking at that stream of revenues as our chief concern. I think we've maintained good roads in Oro Valley, and they are good roads. We don't have a lot of potholes. But you know what I hear that concerns me a great deal is some talk of deferred maintenance in Oro Valley. Let me be clear, deferred maintenance is a deferredly dumb idea.
Break that down for the average listener.
Well, it'd be saying, well, you know what, we know this road should be resurfaced this year, but we've spent too much money on other things, so we're going to defer it for 3 years. Okay, well, that would juxtapose that road will be cheaper to fix in 3 years than it is today. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Further, that road is going to further deteriorate in the 3 years, which is going to cause more expense. When you have to start thinking about deferred maintenance as a way to balance the books, it's like a red flag waving on a hill. It's saying, hey, something's wrong. You need to pay attention here. Something's going awry here that we need to be thinking about. If you've been to the community center, part of that parking lot is an example of deferred maintenance, where the aggregate has come up out of that asphalt and it's just grinding it to pieces. Well, it's going to be now astronomically more expensive to fix it than it would have been if we simply maintained it. Mm-hmm. So when we start thinking about deferred maintenance and stuff, I think that is a warning sign that we need to pay attention to, that something's going wrong. And again, getting back to those two lines of where you have the revenues and expenditures, well, the space between those two lines is where you make your discretionary expenditures. Well, we haven't been doing that. We've been spending above the line because it's convenient, because we want to do it, because there's this special project over here. We take more money out of our reserves mm-hmm. to do certain things. All these are warning signs, and we need to be paying attention to those things. They may be convenient for today, but again, if you have a strategic focus, we're not going in the right direction.
Let me ask you this question before we go to our quick sponsorship break. What is the money being spent on? Is there any particular thing you're looking at going, okay, we're spending a lot of money on that. I don't know if we need to be doing that. Right? As a citizen in Oro Valley, you know, you hear that we're spending more than we're bringing in. You know, to piece that question together, to answer it, would we say that the revenue is tracking downward and that's what's causing the gap, right? Are we causing the gap because the revenue coming in is going down because there's not businesses and stuff in the area? Or are we doing that and we're spending more money? Or is it just more of a spending issue that we have going on?
I think, David, it's both.
Both. Okay.
Is that we're discretionarily spending money on things because they're nice to haves. And what you need to do is look at the core functions of what the town is supposed to be doing, and you fund those things first, much like I did as sheriff. What are the core functions of the sheriff's department? Well, it's not a bloated command staff, I guarantee you that, because nobody cares about that. It's a deputy in a car for call for service at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's what people care about, so that's what you fund first. So you look at those things that are nice to haves. We don't do those things. And you understand that our source of revenue is basically essentially flat. And there isn't any inclination that revenue source is going to increase. Moreover, what I would say is that if you look at our economy, the last major economic downturn we had was in 2008. We had a stock market crash. Then you had the COVID thing. The COVID was an anomaly in 20. It was an anomaly. So we're way overdue for a correction. And I think a lot of people in finance and stock market would tell you, yeah, it does feel like we're overdue. Well, when we have that correction, which is inevitable, the sources of revenue we rely on in Oro Valley will be the most impacted by that downturn. Sales tax, construction tax, bed tax, all those things are adversely impacted by an economic downturn. So instead of spending away our reserve fund, which is very healthy right now, So you look at it and go, it's kind of like our rainy day fund. I bet you have one in your home budget. Marlene and I have about 9 months of life expenses set aside in a rainy day fund in case something bad happens. Well, that's what a reserve fund is in a municipal budget. Well, we look at that, we say that's pretty healthy, so let's take $10 million out of that. Let's take this $1 million out of that. That isn't what it's for. It's for when that economic downturn happens to sustain you. So we have two parallel problems. One is our revenues are essentially flat, and they're cyclical. We cannot rely, unlike property tax, which you can rely upon a little bit, the types of revenue we rely upon are not predictable out into the future. So the revenue stream is tenuous. But at the same time, our expenditures, some of them are unavoidable, like the cost of police and the cost for roads and all those things. Those are unavoidable increases in expenditures. But some of these discretionary expenditures I have problems with, is that we need to be thinking about that and saying, is now the time that we need to be doing that? And I think some of these, clearly the answer is no.
Thank you. Hey, we're going to jump to a quick commercial break for some of our sponsors, and we will be right back with Mark Napier, who is running for mayor in Oro Valley. So stick around, and we will see you again shortly.
In Marana, community isn't just where we live, it's who we are. And at the heart of it all is the Marana Chamber of Commerce. We are building a thriving community through connected business leadership. We start the month bright and early with Marana Mornings, sparking real conversations and connections. We celebrate growing networks at our 4th Tuesday mixers, hosted in exciting spaces. We unite visionaries and leaders at Impact Marana, driving meaningful progress together. We look ahead with Marana Insights, hearing directly from regional voices about what's next for our town. And we serve, through the passion of our board of directors and ambassadors, creating a culture of belonging through service and leadership. Because of our members, we're not just doing more, we're becoming more. Together, we're shaping the future of Marana. We are the Marana Chamber of Commerce.
Hey everybody, it's Chris.
Hey, it's David Samarano.
Hey guys, it's Clint Peak over here.
Hi, I'm Blair Lametti Mathias.
And I'm Summer Smeaton.
Hey, I'm Ron Arenas.
And I'm Will Pena.
Hey guys, I'm Mike Curry.
And I'm Mike Bader.
Hi there, I'm Bruce Ash.
Hi, Ed Wilkinson here.
Hi, this is Bob Elliott.
We are Live the Dream Media. Watch and listen to all of our shows Monday through Friday, only on the Live the Dream Media Network.
For over a century, radio has changed and impacted the lives of everyone, becoming one of the major foundations of communication, keeping us up to date in news and broadcasting, and providing daily music that we love. Radio evolves more as the years progress and time moves forward, and it is only becoming better. Live the Dream Media is proud to be part of that history, stepping into the evolution of online radio to make it more advanced than ever before. Introducing the Live the Dream Media app, your #1 online radio experience. Catch your favorite music 24/7 and tune into live podcasts, or catch up on your own time with our on-demand library. And you can also check out our integrated merch store built right into the app. No matter where you travel in the world, the dream stays with you. You can be anywhere on the planet and stay connected. Download the Live the Dream Media app for free today on the Apple App Store and Google Play, and experience radio reimagined.
Heard my mom's voice when she was 9.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, on a record. Is that cool? Because this guy comes over, comes up and says, "Hey, we're up with a little girl here at the Wapello County Fair.
Yeah.
Oh, what's your name, little girl?" It was my mom.
Oh, that's so cool.
Isn't that cool?
That's cool. Well, welcome back, everybody. We are here. We're just sharing stories. You know, during the breaks, you know, there's more conversations that happen, and it's not something that doesn't happen. We have fun here, and we're gonna get back into it. So, part of running a town, you got to really establish good partnerships or collaborative efforts with other municipalities nearby, and I feel like it's an important question to ask. How are you going to work those collaborations with first, City of Tucson, Pima County, and Marana to make sure that Oro Valley keeps its heritage and it goes the direction you want it to? Because there are things going on at other levels that you go, man, I don't know if that's really beneficial to what we're doing here. That's not great for our program. So as a leader, what are you going to do to make sure that you keep that heritage, you keep going in the direction you and the constituents want to see Oro Valley go into?
Well, I think the main thing that you said there was leader. I've been a leader my whole life in one form or another, and it's not an academic leader. It's a functional leader. I've had developed community relations with people as a patrol division commander, as a public administrator, certainly as a sheriff. I mean, there's a large constituency in this county. The county's 1 million people. And the sheriff, you don't become the sheriff of the Republicans of Pima County or the Democrats of Pima County. It's all citizens of Pima County. So it requires that you develop relationships with the Pasquayaki folks, the Tonowatam, with people that you may not agree with. I think the problem in politics and in the developing of these relationships is that you might look at something and say, you know what, David, there are 10 things on the table. You know what, we disagree about 6 of those things, but we agree about 4 of them. How about we attack those 4 things and really knock them out of the park?
Isn't that in general, though, with people?
It is. It's a normal human disposition. I don't like creating enemies I don't need. Mm-hmm. I may not agree with everything a certain political constituency agrees with, but what I try to do is find common ground. You can do this without surrendering your principles. That's the misconception about this whole thing is if you're a Republican, you reach out to Democrats, that meant you've sold your soul. No, it doesn't. I may need that constituency to move something forward that we all care about. That's the important thing, is finding those common ground areas that you can advance things. You don't advance that by making everybody your enemy that doesn't agree with you. And I think there's a propensity, especially in politics, to say, you don't agree with everything that I say and do, therefore I hate you. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, you can't find common ground without surrendering your principles, your integrity, or your character. I've been very effective at doing that, of building these bridges. I have a good relationship with John Post out in Marana. He's my kind of guy, no question about it. Mayor Murphy was at my kickoff event on Saturday. I have good relationships with the city of Tucson. Do I agree with everything the city of Tucson says or does? Absolutely not. But I have good relationships with people there because I worked there for 2+ decades. Mm-hmm. I maintain very good relationships with the Board of Supervisors and county administration because I have relationships there. It does not mean that I agree with everything that goes on there. What my job to do as a leader is to find common ground that advances the interest of Oro Valley. And you can't do that in a bubble. Oro Valley does not have a wall around it that is completely in a bubble by itself. I mean, we're going to have to interact with the other municipalities. I think there are great strategic opportunities for us to interact with Marana. I think there are great opportunities in the Tangerine Corridor for economic development. There are a lot of opportunities there, but you cannot have those opportunities if you make everybody your enemy. Mm-hmm. I have a very strong personality, a very strong character. I'm not going to surrender that to anybody, but that doesn't mean that I can't build relationships with people that perhaps I don't agree with everything that person says or does. That's not important. My job as your mayor will be to find common ground that advances the interest of Oro Valley. And that's what I'll work tirelessly at doing, is finding those common grounds, those strategic bridges that will be cooperative. We look at RTA. Well, RTA is a regional transportation authority, right? Well, there are projects in there that will benefit Oro Valley, transit, mm-hmm. our Dollarite stuff. So you have to be able to look at those things in a strategic sense and say, we cannot build a wall around Oro Valley and be a bubble unto ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and that vote, I think, was a pretty good indication of where people feel the region needed to go. And that was more development.
I think there were problems with RTA, and I think anybody
would say that. I mean,
would say no.
But here's the thing I learned pretty quick, Mark. And I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Nobody else had another plan. There was a lot of critics for it and a lot of people giving their opinion on it, but I never came across another plan that said, "Hey, we've got this better idea and everything." And there were people that came after me and some other and some other people in this organization. They came after Clint. They would comment on things, and it was just like, look, this isn't us being a champion for it, right? We're not sitting here going to put it on a shirt and wear it around and say, I love RTA. I am RTA. No, it was because there was no other better option at that time that was presented for us. And some people were like, "Oh, let's push it back 5 years or whatever else, and then we'll come up with a better plan." And I said, to me, I'm like, "Hey, 5 years from now we're really starting to affect generational progress here." And you said it yourself. You're doing a lot of things because you want to see your family have awesome opportunities and stick around. I know Clint Peak wants to have opportunities for his family to be here and to have jobs and to stay here instead of getting educated at a great university, going through some great school systems here and then bouncing out, right? And part of that is coming up with good infrastructure that's going to connect us all and benefit us in the long run.
And for younger folks. But you're spot on with RTA.
So you talking about that, again, it goes back to what you said about working with the other municipalities here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have to figure out the good things that we can work on, and that's what we saw that as.
Well, I'll give you an example about working with other municipalities. Sheriff Mark Lamb was sheriff in Pinal County when I was sheriff in Pima County, and we reached out to Tonawanda Reservation, and he and I went down there as elected sheriffs and had a tour of the reservation, met with the tribal chairman and stuff. And you know what they told us? That we were the first elected sheriffs in their memory that had ever personally visited the reservation and reached out to leadership.
No kidding.
And we needed to understand that was a major corridor that also went into Pinal County. So Sheriff Lamb had an interest in that corridor because we knew it was a major trafficking corridor for not only narcotics, but human trafficking. Well, the Tonawanda people were seen by some as the enemy allowing this. Okay, well, we needed that cooperative because their reservation actually extends past the international border.
A lot of people don't know that. Yeah.
They were there before us. And so we had to reach out to them and develop lines of communication and understanding where we could. They gave Sheriff Lamb and I a tribal flag and some pottery and stuff, and they were overwhelmed by the fact that we reached out to them. Well, you have to build those relationships, and those relationships have got to build fruit, but you can't do that if you're isolating things. It's real easy to say I'm against something. That is incredibly easy.
Yeah.
Any monkey can be against something. But as you pointed out, all I wanted people to tell me what Plan B is with RTA.
Did you get one? Did anybody tell you what Plan B was?
No, I didn't know what Plan B was. And perhaps the worst of all plans is no plan. And that was what the plan was. And so while I had serious reservations about RTA, and I think those are well-grounded, and people had real reason to be questioning of RTA, but some of the diatribe about RTA was simply misplaced, and there was not a good Plan B. And my constituents in the Oro Valley would suffer because of the dial-a-ride stuff, that some elderly residents rely upon that to get back and forth to doctor appointments and so forth. Well, how are we going to fund that? And then people say, well, just create a sales tax for Oro Valley to do their own transportation.
Yeah, easy.
Come on, man. I ran the transportation system for the University of Arizona. It's a lot more complicated than you think. I ran the CAT-Trans system and the paratransit system for the University of Arizona when I was an administrator there. It's a lot more complicated than you think. So I had a problem with that. And I think we need to look at a regional perspective. Certainly with Marana, because they're our neighbors, is developing a good strategic relationship with Mayor Post. Got a great relationship with Roxanne Ziegler and others out in Marana. Two of my kids live in Marana, so I care about Marana a great deal. But we've got to build a strategic relationship there with Marana and see where we can, cross-pollinate our common interest. And look at, as far south as Sahuarita, I've got a relationship with Mayor Murphy down there and the Board of Supervisors. I'm having lunch today with Jan Lesher, who remains a close friend.
Yeah. I like Jan.
So I try to build these relationships. I will tell you one thing about relationships. You build them before you need them. Because when you need a relationship, you can't build it anymore. And we saw that with the current sheriff when he tried to reach out to the FBI. He had no relationship there. And that caused a big problem. You develop relationships with these people before you need them. And that's what leaders do. And that's kind of what I see as a potential shortcoming in my opponent is no real leadership experience at all. None.
Yeah.
Zero. No real life experience in real leadership roles. Not only have I been an administrative leader, but I've been an operational leader where we had to make decisions that literally had life and death consequence. Yeah. And those are big decisions.
Yeah.
And you don't develop the ability to make those decisions and have poise and leadership ability by reading books or through temporary positions. That's cultivated over years. I can tell you that from the time I was promoted to lieutenant, 3 decades ago, to now, I'm a much better leader than I was then. You know why? Because of experiences, failures, things I did well, things I could have done better. And you learn over a period of decades how to be more effective. And that doesn't come with good intention or reading books. It comes with experience. And I think that's really my strong suit that I bring to bear is depth of experience and relevant education to guide a public body in an effective way.
So you're explaining how you separate yourself from your counterpart. That's right.
Yes.
And that's it right there.
And it's certainly, I would never suggest as a Christian person, as kind of a nice guy, that anybody's a bad person. I don't believe that people who run for public office are bad people. But I've often used this example that I'm an educated man and relatively bright, but I'd be a terrible algebra teacher. You know why? Because I hate algebra. I'm no good at it. No amount of coaching, no amount of mentoring will ever make me good at algebra. So if you put me in a classroom and said I had to be an algebra teacher, I would be no good at it.
Yeah.
Some people are not really positioned well temperamentally or experience-wise or relevant education-wise to fill a certain role. It doesn't make them bad people. It just makes them not very applicable to that current position. It's much like I would be a terrible algebra teacher. I've been teaching graduate school at Boston University for 21 years. I'd like to think I'm pretty good at it. My student evaluations would say that I'm pretty darn competent at it after doing it for more than 20 years. I've co-developed curriculum for that program. So I think I'm pretty good at that, but that wouldn't make me a good algebra teacher.
What do you say to those voters that are kind of on the edge, right? They're sitting right between this person and that person. What do you say to them as far as what you have to offer outside of your experience and qualities, right? What is Mark Napier going to do when he's mayor? Are you going to be the type of mayor that's out and about that people can get a hold of? Or are you going to be the type that just sits in the tower, hangs out, no one really hears from him, maybe once in a while shows up at a dinner? What kind of mayor can the voters expect from Mark Napier?
Well, the thing I would say is the best predictor of future performance is past performance. So look at who I am and what I've done, and that's who you're going to get. I'm a social butterfly. I just am. For me to be out in the public, I've been a public servant my whole life, and so for me to do that is a very natural thing. Mm-hmm. I'm also partially retired, so I have time. That's another thing I have an abundance of is time. I'll tell you a funny story. My granddaughter spent the night with us the other night, and I'm a grandpa too. That's the other thing about me is. And I got up and I was going to play golf with my friends, and I told Parker, I said, well, Grandpa's got to go. And she looked at me, she goes, Grandpa, I thought you were real tired. She meant retired. She thought I was going to work. And I said, no, honey, I'm not real tired. But to your answer is, as sheriff, I was out in the community all the time. In fact, I drove my assistant nuts because she said, how can you Cammie, if she was listening, she told me, Mark, you have to learn how to say no to people. And I said, no, Cammie. And she goes, see, you just did it. And I couldn't do it. I was all over the county all the time, speaking at events, attending things, and that's just natural for me. And also, I think it's incumbent upon a public servant to do that. You are given the vote and the confidence of your constituents. That's a sacred thing, right?
They trust you.
They trust you, and you have to be out there with them. So for me to do that, it was like being the sheriff and being in my jail. I had a key to my jail. I could walk around my jail whenever I wanted to. Unfortunately, it's a maze in there, and I'd get lost, and I'd have to have a corrections officer show me where the door was, as I'd be wandering about in there. But they thought that was novel, that a sheriff would actually be in there. I had them lock me in one of my pods. I told my staff, I said, I want to know the most dangerous pod in my jail. And they said, well, it's up here. I said, okay. They said, what do you want us to do? I said, I want you to lock me in there with my CO. I want to see what's going on. They go, well, what if you get taken hostage? I thought for a minute. I said, don't call my wife. It'd be a bad negotiating strategy. I just don't think that would be wise. But I went in there with a pod with, my corrections officer, a young 20-something-year-old kid. And I said, tell me about what you do. So I need to understand what you do. A third of my department is in that jail. I need to know what they do. And they need to know I care about them. I will tell you something I've learned about leadership is seen, not heard. Nobody cares what you say. Human beings will default to what they see over what they hear 1,000 times out of 1,000. So it doesn't matter what you say. You can say you're a great leader, you can say you care and all those things, but people are going to watch what you do, and they're going to watch how you behave, and they're going to believe that over everything else. It doesn't matter. And you have to remember that people are watching you all the time. And for me, it's just a natural thing to be out with people. I'm kind of a gregarious guy. I love people, and my wife loves people. She was a nurse for 43 years. It's what we do. It's a natural thing. It's not something you can't put leadership on like a suit of clothes.
People sure do try.
They do, and
every day. Every day, everybody is on, especially on LinkedIn, man. Everybody's a leader and they're solving the world's problems. But I agree. You got to lead by example.
And you can't, the horse does not push the cart. If you want to lead something, be in front of something, right? Mm-hmm. You don't abstain from votes on council. That isn't what leaders do. You lead, and you have to be in front of something to lead. You have to get people to follow you. Or you're walking around by yourself. That's what leaders do. They inspire people by being in front of something and convincing others to follow that vision. People follow vision. They don't follow mission. They don't follow values. They follow vision. Everything in human history that has been accomplished of any great consequence was by vision. 7 years ago. In 10 years, we'll put a man on the moon. One day, my 4 little children will be judged by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. Everything in human history that has happened of consequence has happened by somebody conveying a vision. People follow vision. They only follow leaders if leaders are in front of something. You can't do that. What makes me nuts are that elected officials who say, you need to reelect me. Well, why? Because I'm going to solve these problems. Check me if I'm wrong there, Skippy, but weren't these problems created on your watch? And now we're supposed to believe that you're the only person that can solve the very problems that you created.
Right.
This doesn't make any sense to me, and it shouldn't make sense to anybody who's electing these people to solve the very problems that they created. The other type of person that we tend to elect are the person who denies there are problems. Hey, don't look over here. Everything's great. Reelect me. Well, but I can see the stuff over there. Everything is not going great. And I need somebody that understands that can lead us forward and get us out of that. And then the weakest form of a person is the person who blames their predecessor.
Yeah.
That is the weakest form of leadership of all time. When I became sheriff, I inherited a $5-6 million deficit in our budget because we're halfway through the budget year. I could have blamed Sheriff Nanos, and I'd have been correct in doing that. I didn't do that. Pirate ship did not come by my house and tell me I had to be the sheriff. I signed up for that. My job now was to solve that problem. So when I become mayor of Oro Valley, my job is to solve those problems, not to blame anybody else, not to point fingers or do anything of the sort. That is weak leadership. My job is to solve those problems because people trusted me with something that's sacred to me, which is their vote, their vote of confidence to lead their community forward and solve those problems. And that's what I'm here to do. Otherwise, I'd be playing golf and being a grandpa.
Be real tired.
I'd be real tired. And there are parts of me some days that wish I could just be like that, but that's not me. Yeah. That's not me. And I love Oro Valley. It's been my home for more than 30 years. And we need to keep it the great community that it is.
Keeping it the way it is. So this next conversation, this is the last bit we got. Over the last 5 years, I grew up in this area, right? So I've worked for the town of Marana. I've been involved in a lot of community things. I've watched people intentionally create problems that don't exist in Marana. And they're attempting to run political campaigns and different things on these matters. Even to the point that they decided it would be a good idea to get a social justice program involved to come over and get petitions signed and lie to the citizens at mass scale while they're out and about, right? Before all this happened, myself and some other people were warning, hey, you should try to be in front of this kind of stuff, because once you start really trying to develop things and get into the nitty-gritty of bringing in economic development and all that stuff, man, it sure sounds cool to say that we're going to have economic development and all that stuff. But what we saw recently over the last year in Marana was a very coordinated and organized effort to stop it, to keep Marana. People want to see Marana be a wasteland of economic development. They want to see it continue to just be a flat, just a bedroom community where everybody goes and has to drive down the freeway and go a long ways, right? You guys are next, right? Everybody else knows that, and I just don't. As you move into this world, right? I think it'd be a disservice for myself and others to not share what we've seen happen, right? And you say you want to keep things a certain way, but this is something to really look at and analyze for the future of Oro Valley, right? Because we talk, hey, we want to annex and we want to do all these things, but it's very apparent that there is a large group of people, whether they're here or not here, right? The program that came here was not from here; it was from California. That should be pretty telling on its own for people listening. You should pay attention to that kind of stuff. All these different steps you want to take towards annexing and increasing revenue and stuff for the town, it's obviously going to be very challenging. So what are you going to do as mayor with the town and the people you work with to ensure when something like that starts to happen that people are aware and they know what's going on before strangers start showing up at their door lying about it, a bunch of different things to get signatures?
Well, again, to be a leader, you got to establish those relationships before you need them. And, I think Mayor Post is a strong leader. He's a good man. What I bring to the table is I'm an effective communicator, and I've had to communicate in large ways to a countywide organization multiple times. So you got to look at how many different ways you communicate and to some degree the simplicity with your messaging, right? If your message is too complicated, too long, people tune out. So you want to make sure that your messaging is concise and understandable to a large segment of your constituents. So they understand that and that they have a relationship with you as their leader and they trust you. They say, no, Mark says this is not right, and he's explained it in a way that I understand it, and I'm not going to buy into this. I don't know these people, and their message may be very polished and may be very convincing.
As it was.
But I don't trust them. You know who I trust? I trust Mayor Post. I trust Mayor Napier. They're going to give me the straight skinny because they have that relationship with me. God bless Ed Honey. Ed Honey was a fixture out there. Everybody trusted him. I loved Ed Honey. Anytime that Ed and I got together, we talked shop for about 5 minutes and our grandkids for 30 minutes. That's who Ed was. He had that relationship. And John Post is developing that same relationship, that same credibility out in Marana. I have great respect for John Post. But it's how you communicate. You got to communicate through many different modalities because not everybody gets their same information the same way.
You're right.
I'll give you an example. When I was sheriff, I realized that I was communicating. I had sheriff notes I'd send out about every Friday, which was a document for me sent out to the whole department saying this is what's going on. My staff came to me and said, you know what, Gen X doesn't read. Wow, I think you're onto something there. So we started, even though I wasn't comfortable doing it, doing videos. And a little video on a YouTube channel that they could watch. You know why? Because that's how they get their information. So you think about the different modalities by which you communicate and which populations get that. You know, there's a population that gets everything on X. There's a population that relies on social media, Facebook. There's YouTube. You know, there are podcasts. There's printed materials. I mean, and, you know, the demographics of Oro Valley, we have retirement, young families, and you got to think, okay, based on what I know about that demographic, how do I communicate to them? You do that as a political candidate as well, as how do I communicate to that constituents? And make sure that you're sending it out in a convincing, digestible way, as many different ways of hitting that to cater to those communication styles of those various constituencies. And it is complicated. My undergraduate degree is in social psychology, which is sociology and psychology combined. So it's the psychology of individuals, but also the psychology of groups. And I do rely on that a lot as a public administrator, looking at that education and saying, from a sociology standpoint, what do I know about this? But then from an individual psychology standpoint, how do I blend those things together? And that's my undergraduate degree that equips me with the ability to think in those terms. And I think that's been very helpful to me in my career. Certainly, I was hostage negotiation supervisor. Having a degree in psychology certainly helps with that. And so I think the challenge is developing that credibility, that you are a trusted leader, that they know you're going to tell them the truth, and then communicating that truth in simple terms through as many modalities as you can, understanding how people get their communication.
Yeah. And now you have a case study.
Yes. Yeah.
Hey, Mark, it's been a pleasure having you on
Thank
the
you.
show today. Can you believe an hour went by already?
No,
How'd
it's
that
been
feel?
real quick.
Everybody's like, yeah, it feels like 10 or 15 minutes, and you're an
Yeah.
hour in. So, but hey, I want to get people informed on how to help out your campaign. What can they do? What can they do? Where can they go to find out more? And what kind of help are you looking for going into the campaign season?
Well, like all candidates, if you're an Oro Valley voter, I hope that you'll bless me with your vote. We're turning in all our paperwork today, so we'll be on the ballot. We're turning in almost 800 signatures. Only needed 525. My website is napierformayor.org, napierformayor.org. You can go to my website and learn a lot more about me. And I hate to say this because it's the least acceptable part of running a candidate is we need to raise money. So on our website, there's a donate button. You don't have to donate thousands of dollars. Candidates live by the $25, $50, $100 donations, and we need those. We're going to need money to run an effective campaign. So I'd encourage people to go to my website, napierformayor.org, donate. You can reach out to me and ask questions there. On my website, there's a link to contact me directly. And I'm just humbly ask the people of Oro Valley, bless me with your vote. Bless me with the sanctity of your vote, the confidence of your vote, and I'll work tirelessly to be a good mayor for our community because our community is my home.
Mark, we appreciate it very much, and we hope you have a good rest of the week. Listeners and viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. And I just wanted to go over some quick changes with you regarding some of our shows. So Wake Up Live with Christopher DeSimone is now part of our premium membership spot on YouTube. So you can only access his shows past the 48-hour mark if you are a member of our Live the Dream Media YouTube premium channel membership. So make sure you knock that out. Also, this show and the Clint Peak Show are moving to our starter program pack on YouTube, but that's after 2 weeks. So make sure you tune in, become part of our membership. It helps us grow redundancy for the show and grow the community and bring in awesome guests like this. As always, we appreciate you very much. Hope you have an awesome week. We'll see you next time.